Whereas the idea that you will impose your version is very arrogant, but also it's, I think, most of the time politically driven. Because if you want to assert your version of Islam, you're also asserting your righteousness over the others, and you are actually gaining some political profit from that most of the time. That's why I think in most of these religious freedom issues, godliness and modesty is our really strongest suit, is our strongest source in Islam to assert against people who claim to have the ultimate access to truth and who impose their version on other Muslims. And again, the focus on godliness is very important because it is the real argument against practices such as the religious police. Because I have seen no religious police which really creates a genuine godliness, a genuine piety. In Turkey, it is a joke that most Saudis, not all, but some of them, would look very pious under the hijabs in Saudi Arabia, but then travel to London or Istanbul to the craziest bars, to have the wildest parties. Apparently, that sort of coercion doesn't even produce the end game. It produces the result that it is seeking, which is a pious society. Now, my book is full of all those stories and details and how the caliphs acted and how these schools emerged and what were the debates. But what I think the takeaway message is this: there are roots of a political liberalism inside Islam. If you look at different Islamic sources, if you look at the Quran, first of all, much of Islamic Sharia, Islamic law is post-Quranic, so it's all interpretations made by medieval scholars rather than being Quranic. And they're all contextual, based on a certain context. So you can argue for change. And there has been a lot of change, actually, in Islamic law under the Ottoman Empire, for example. The Ottoman Empire abolished most of these corporal punishments. It brought equality for all citizens in the 19th century, opened up a parliament, all under Islamic justification. So there has been this movement of changing and reform and arguments for change in the Muslim world. The question is how these dynamics for change, reform, pluralism, tolerance, and liberty will win against other schools, the schools who are more dogmatic and so on. Since they are not theologically less valuable, theologically less convincing, I think what matters there, I mean, the liberal school is not theologically less convincing. What matters there is how Muslim societies will be open to these debates, how you will have a Muslim mindset which is more open to appreciating liberty. In other words, what also matters is the context of Muslim societies, their internal dynamic, their social structures, their economic structures, and so on. And as I again try to show in my book, it is not an accident that the more liberal schools of thought in Islam, the postponers, the Mu'tazila, the rationalist Mu'tazila, emerged, for example, in centers of trade, in the medieval world. Whereas the Hanbali school basically emerged, and again, as was reasserted in the modern era, in the desert, because those two contexts create two different types of individuals. If you're a merchant, and for example, the founders of more flexible schools, like Abu Hanifa was a merchant, and he was traveling from Morocco to Baghdad to Basra, and getting exposed to different cultures, coming across Greek thought and meeting Jews and Christians and the Persians and this Byzantium culture and so on. So that very exposure to different cultures helped them to be also more flexible and more rationalistic in their approach. And today, when you look at Muslim societies, I would say, in places where you have a more dynamic society, thanks to the market economy, for example, you have these debates being reopened. In Turkey, where I come from, for example, some of these early debates in Islam are being reopened today because now you have a society which is engaged in a market economy, which is becoming more globalized, which experiences democracy, which understands that the benefits of freedom and sees the benefits of freedom in its economic life. They say, well, maybe we should rethink this apostasy issue because it really doesn't make sense. So when they look back and they see, oh, there's an argument for changing this. So the arguments are there. The question is how people will be more drawn to those arguments. And that's why I think in my book I try to basically say there are really two important dynamics to support. I mean, if the West wants to help change in the Muslim world, two important dynamics to support in the Muslim world. One is democracy. which allows all political groups to enter the political system. Because in places that you did not have democracy, where you had oppressive rulers, the opposition was always, growingly radicalized, as we saw in Egypt, and other places so far. Whereas in Turkey, for example, we had democracy and since 1950 free elections, and that brings people into the political game. That's one important dynamic. Secondly, the market economy, which really not just creates wealth, but also shapes people's minds and make them think more rationally about the world. And also, the market economy creates an interaction with the West in equal terms. When you make with business, like in Turkey, we have very pious businessmen in Turkey, Islamic. A European think tank recently called them the Calvinists of Islam, referring to Max Weber, in his early, birth of capitalism. These are people who are very pious, pray 5 times a day, and say Prophet Muhammad was a merchant. He was, by the way, a very successful one. They don't refer to his wars; they refer to his, trading, the merchantness, in his life and his mission. And they support Turkey's access to the EU. And when you ask about the apostasy, they would say, really, but that's something old, and let's look for some new interpretations. They become more open to these reformist ideas. So ideas are important, and also their context, I would say, is important. And that context will come more when I think the market economy and the democracy makes more inroads to Muslims. Whereas, finally, I would say, what I've observed over the years is that military conflicts do not really create conflicts in the Muslim world, and that actually make people more and more defensive, and doesn't help liberal ideas to flourish. So thanks so much for your attention. I'll stop there, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Kami, but I'm a secular Muslim. I don't go to mosque, I go to church or synagogue, depends on who I date with. My question to you is, like most Western or most American, I somehow feel like Islam has violence, it's in genetic or DNA.
Sorry?
That somehow Islam is very, very violent religion. Maybe it's because I've been here for so long. As a Turkish, or you are Eastern and Western, what do you think about this? And let me give you the example. I used to think that Muslim are congenital liar because I'm from Pakistan.
A liar?
Lawyer, yeah. The people who cannot tell the truth.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So, but I changed my mind. See, I believe that because I went to Pakistan twice within the last 25 years, and I feel like everybody lies there. People just cannot tell the truth. They talk in circle. But I changed my mind because I have many Indian friends, Hindu, Sikh, and Muslim. We are all same. We have very weak sense of morality once it's come to telling the truth. But I heard that at one point, Muhammad, God peace be upon him, said that you can lie if it's good for your religion. And I'm sure that is a wrong hadith, because a lot of hadith are designed by people, imperfect people like you and me. So I asked the same, but I mean, okay, see the violent part, why Islamic is genetically violent. I grew up in Pakistan, and when I used to go to mosque, my parents were too poor to send me to school, so I went to Deoband Madrasa. So the first thing you see in mosque says that keep fighting with them unless at the end, the controversy is buried or killed. So it means as a child I was taught about keep fighting, and it was Sunni and Deoband Madrasa, and there was Shia mosque like couple of mine. Okay, so I asked the same question to Dr. Karen Armstrong, that why Muslims are so violent. Why? She told me it's not just Muslims who are violent. All the 3 monotheistic religions are very violent by nature because they believe in one God, and they say, okay, my God or no God. Okay, so if you don't believe...
Thanks. Just to leave more time. Well, I don't think, that Muslims by definition are liars, or any human group is particularly definition. The thing is, your experience of Islam is very much shaped, of course, by your Pakistani background. If you were coming from Bosnia, you would have a very different Islamic experience. If you're coming from Turkey, you would have a very different one. So I think in some problems in the Muslim world, problems from a liberal democratic perspective, come from Islamic roots exclusively, like this bans on apostasy and so on. Other problems come from the political structures or the cultural codes in that part of the world. Things like honor killings, for example, they predate Islam. They come from a patriarchal society, And actually, many scholars have said honor killing is against Islam. In the sense, I mean, if a father kills his daughter because he went out to a movie with a young boy, is committing a murder according to Islamic law. Because if they have done something wrong, they both have done wrong. And according to Islam, both are sinners. But it's always the females who get killed. I've never seen a guy killed for honor. This is a pre-existing patriarchal problem there, which Muslims sometimes confuse with religion, but it's not religious. So we should distinguish between what is religious and not, and also try to work them out. And I would say the issue of lying, maybe, I don't know, I mean, I'm not that great expert on the culture in Pakistan in terms of telling the truth. But in closed and oppressed societies, people have less insensitive to be honest. I mean, sometimes in Turkey, I mean, there are laws about not insulting this, not insulting that, and it can be a secular government too. I mean, you sometimes feel that you develop this, even in the Soviet Union, that was the same. That was a big lie that everybody was believing it. So this is maybe not something religious, but because of the political structures in the society. So, but that explains you why Muslims living in other places can develop very different habits. Yes. Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. I'll come to you.
Sir, I was interested in the outline that you made of the different types of sects within Islam. And my question is, which sect is the most dominant in America right now? My understanding is that because many of the mosques in this country are funded and started by the Saudis, that Wahhabism is very dominant in the United States right now. It is where I live in Virginia. And I was just wondering, how do you get from Wahhabism to the sort of reformed, rational Islam that you advocate, when it doesn't seem like that's, I'm not sure that there's any route that takes you there.
Well, first of all, I'm not the greatest expert on Islam in America. I mean, I come from Turkey, and I know the Turkish experience, and the Middle East probably a bit better. I know Islam in America through what I read.